Good afternoon, we are Group 4, and for today's ethics presentation, we'll be covering bank impersonator scams in Singapore. So in late 2021, Singapore experienced a surge in bank impersonation scams, the Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation OCBC being a major target through short message services phishing scams. Victims would receive SMS messages from scammers impersonating OCBC, claiming issues with their bank account or credit cards. These messages would include a link prompting customers to click on it to resolve the problem, directing them to a fake OCBC website where victims entered their login credentials and OTPs. These details enabled scammers to seize their bank accounts and subsequently indulging in fraudulent transactions. Next, what were the impacts of these scams? In December 2021 alone, 469 OCBC account holders lost at least $8.5 million, and total losses amounted to $13.7 million, affecting 790 victims. Some victims even lost their entire savings, leaving them emotionally and psychologically distressed. How did banks in Singapore respond to the situation? The Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, and the Association of Banks in Singapore, ABS, implemented additional security measures. All clickable links in all marketing emails and SMSs were removed. Additionally, the daily transfer limit for pay now transactions reduced from 5,000 to 1,000, and the amount transferred per transaction was reduced from the default 1,000 to 200. There were also new requirements for banks to send notifications upon any request to change a customer's bank account details. For all affected customers, OCBC decided to reimburse them in full and decided to ramp up their customer service by making their customer service team permanent and adding an option for customers to escalate reports on scams via the OCBC hotline. Generally, the OCBC phishing scams were a turning point for both consumers and the banking industry in Singapore to ramp up their security systems. Next, we will dive into the key ethical issues that these stakeholders breached. So, we unpacked 3 ethical issues that these phishing scams revealed. Firstly, a breach of trust between OCBC and customers. Secondly, bank responsibility versus customer responsibility. And lastly, regulatory oversight by MAS.
Firstly, on the breach of trust between OCBC and customers, where a loyal customer base is built on trust. Customers trust OCBC with their financial assets, and OCBC has a fiduciary duty where they are legally obliged to prioritize customer interests. The scam breached security and trust, which was largely targeted at vulnerable individuals exploiting their limited knowledge. This highlighted a significant gap in OCBC's ethical duty to promote fairness and justice, violating the principle of duty of loyalty and care. Insufficient customer support intensified feelings of betrayal from inadequate customer protection. OCBC lacked transparency in disclosing potential vulnerabilities and the foresight of potential risks. This undermined customer trust and reinforced their priority on profit rather than customer welfare. Motivated blindness also contributed to their oversight, ignoring ethical obligations of due diligence and hence did not invest in customer protection as there were little financial returns. Overall, the scam reflected OCBC's disregard for customer well-being, failing to protect the vulnerable or fulfill their fiduciary obligations. Subsequently, the consequences were the reputational damage faced and compensations with targeted measures required from OCBC. Now serving as a cautionary example for the industry, this case highlights the risk of pursuing digitalization without committing to customer protection measures. Hence, it is an urgent need that the financial sector integrates ethical responsibility with digital transformation in order to uphold the foundational trust between banks and their customers.
Next, there is the issue of whether it is the bank or customer's responsibility to prevent the phishing scam case. OCBC has a corporate social responsibility and fundamental duty to its employees, customers, and shareholders. As a large institutional firm with access to ample resources, OCBC has a responsibility to manage its customers' financial information and assets securely. Financial institutions have a duty of care and an obligation to implement robust measures to detect and prevent harm to their clients. In fulfilling its social responsibility, OCBC must consider potential risks and develop effective control plans while rolling out digitalization initiatives. MAS imposed an additional capital requirement of approximately $330 million on OCBC after detecting deficiencies in the mitigation of identified risks, pre- and post-transaction controls, as well as delays in their response in dealing with the wave of SMS phishing scams. The principles-based ethics framework recognizes that decisions should be made based on moral principles and duties, and some rules should be abided regardless of outcome. OCBC's compensation of its customers is an acknowledgement of its responsibility and a commitment to doing what is right. By reimbursing customers despite profit losses, OCBC demonstrates the principle of beneficence, acting in the best interest of customers. Overall, the principle-based framework suggests that banks are primarily responsible in preventing such scams, as protecting customers is a fundamental duty of the bank. Meanwhile, customers also have a duty to perform their due diligence in protecting their financial assets, although it has been entrusted to the bank. The lack of awareness of digital scams coupled with negligence led victims to click on fraudulent links that appeared to be from the bank, disclosing their personal information. In today's digital banking age, customers must make an effort to know the risks of online banking and take precautionary measures when providing their personal information online. However, this raises an important question. Is it truly fair to place the entire burden of responsibility on customers, especially for certain demographics, where the vulnerable have limited resources to digital literacy? Banks have a social responsibility to ensure sufficient preventive measures, while customers have a personal responsibility in exercising due diligence as customers. So, is it the bank or the customer's responsibility to protect the financial assets that have been entrusted with the bank? Under the utilitarian framework, which emphasizes actions that promote the greatest good for the greatest number, we believe that it's primarily the bank's responsibility to ensure that sufficient measures are implemented. Given their substantial resources, banks have a greater ability and thus responsibility to implement effective and robust security measures to protect customer assets. In this manner, banks can promote the greatest good by safeguarding the greatest number of customers, thereby fostering trust and stability. Hence, under the utilitarian framework, since banks can promote the greatest benefit for a greater number of people, it is the bank's responsibility to protect the customer's financial assets. Under the principles-based ethics approach, responsibilities are determined by the specific duties and obligations of each role. Banks, as custodians of customers' financial assets, have to protect these assets, guided by the principles of justice and beneficence. The principle of justice requires fairness in handling customers' assets and providing equitable protection for all customers. The principle of beneficence compels banks to act in the customer's best interest, prioritizing their financial security. Thus, they have the primary responsibility to implement robust and fair security measures to safeguard customers' financial assets and bear the professional duty to educate customers on safe practices. What is the extent of OCBC's responsibility? Is OCBC obligated to reimburse customers affected by the scam? OCBC is also a profit-driven company with a duty to its shareholders. Reimbursing victims would raise concerns among shareholders since OCBC has no legal obligation to do so, and it might affect OCBC's financial performance, leading to reduced profits for the company, reducing dividends and affecting share price. However, OCBC taking on full responsibility and reimbursing their customers is essential in helping to rebuild the bank's reputation and regain customer trust, supporting long-term profits.
Lastly, the case highlights regulatory oversight by MAS, having the fundamental role in enforcing cybersecurity standards to ensure financial institutions comply with rigorous security measures. MAS has the duty to foresee and address potential risks. The high number of OCBC scams demonstrated a gap in MAS regulatory framework. Lacking specific guidelines to prevent impersonation scams, MAS delayed response to this large-scale scam reflected a lapse in foresight. In a digitalized era, effective regulation requires a forward-looking approach, and hence there is an urgent need to transit its oversight from a reactionary stance to a more anticipatory model. Beyond protecting customer assets, MAS has a regulatory obligation of cultivating a transparent and accountable culture. Ensuring institutions openly share information of their practices or risks will compel them to fulfill their fiduciary duty by prioritizing customer protection, recognizing customers are an integral part of their operations. Ensuring financial institutions have a high standard of care, this fosters ethical responsibility within the industry. With technological advancement, MAS has a duty to constantly evolve, redefining regulatory practices to new technological risks.
Now I'll be introducing the recommendations our group has come up with to counter bank impersonation scams. Our two recommendations are to introduce real-time transaction monitoring with the help of AI and pushing for customer education and awareness programs. Firstly, analyzing historical data such as the customer's transaction pattern to detect anomalies in real time could help to combat phishing attacks. Relying on factors like frequency, amount, and the location, AI would analyze the customer's behavior and establish a normal transaction. Using this pattern, the AI system will then be able to flag out unusual activities, such as a sudden high value or overseas transactions. When highly suspicious transactions arises, the AI system can highlight the issue to the fraud team or block transactions pending verification. On top of solely relying on the AI system, mobile banking applications should also take charge by automatically sending out notifications to customers for every transaction. Aside from being able to monitor their transactions in real time, customers are also then able to report any unauthorized transactions that the AI system fails to detect. For example, if the account of a customer living in Singapore was compromised by someone also living in Singapore, the system might not detect it due to the algorithm. Now you may be wondering, how should banks properly implement the AI system? Well, Banks should prioritize the responsible AI usage by following 4 key principles. The first is consent, meaning banks should ask for the customer's consent to implement this AI usage. Next, we have transparency. Linking to consent, how their data is used should be clearly explained to the customers. Then, privacy. Banks are to ensure that only essential data to protect the customers are retained. Lastly, fairness. To prevent any unintended statistical discrimination against certain customer demographics, banks should continuously monitor and refine AI models. Moving on, we'll be talking about how our recommendation to implement monitoring with AI will affect the 3 main stakeholders. The first is customers. They'll be reassured that the AI monitoring protects their accounts without unnecessary intrusion of their privacy, as the banks show commitment to prioritizing their customers and their privacy. Maintaining transparency helps customers understand their rights, such as the option to confirm fact transactions or request a review. The incorporated feature of the need for customer response helps foster customer engagement and the trust in banks. The next stakeholder is OCBC. Implementing this ethical system would demonstrate the bank's strong commitment to safeguarding customer assets and data. This positions the bank as a trusted steward of customers' financial information, which can increase customer loyalty and reinforce the bank's reputation for integrity, leading to potentially higher revenue. On the other hand, implementing this system comes with significant operational and financial costs. Regular audits, such as testing for biases and refining the model to respond to emerging fraud patterns, are necessary, putting further strain on OCBC. Additionally, fraud detection could potentially lead to a significant loss in revenue for the bank via incorrectly declining legitimate transactions. Lastly, we have MAS. They will benefit from financial institutions implementing such robust security measures, as it contributes to the overall stability of Singapore's financial system. This AI monitoring system could decrease systemic vulnerabilities and increase public confidence in Singapore's banking sector. While AI monitoring can enhance fraud detection, the lack of human oversight and expertise may result in a subpar system. AI systems often struggle to adapt to dynamic situations since they operate based on algorithms, data, and patterns. As such, actual fraudulent activities may only sometimes be detected. In that case, human experts are required to review and interpret the alerts, especially in complex cases where AI lacks contextual understanding of the subject. For example, a customer's unusual and excessive spending pattern could be due to travel instead of fraud, and this can be verified by a trained staff. Heavy reliance on AI risks an increase in unnecessary customer distraction, frustration, and a decline in trust between the customer and the bank.
I'll now be going through our second recommendation, which is the Customer Education and Awareness Programs. Firstly, these programs provide essential materials like online tutorials, workshops, and phishing exercises to educate customers. The goal is to equip them with relevant knowledge on current scams, both locally and internationally. By raising awareness, we empower customers to identify and avoid scams more effectively. We are also leveraging AI technology to monitor transactions. AI can flag suspicious activities and alert the fraud team or temporarily block transactions until they are verified. This provides an extra layer of security, especially for vulnerable customers. We have taken measures to ensure our program is effective. Firstly, we believe a regulatory body like MAS should oversee the creation of educational content to ensure that the content is both accurate and accessible. Additionally, banks can collaborate with this regulatory body to create materials that are clear and address common customer issues. Secondly, we have included interactive components like tutorials, workshops, and simulations. These practical elements will show customers the real-life applications of our program to make learning engaging. Moving on to the impacts of our program, for customers, they will be better at detecting scams, increasing their confidence in digital banking. When customers learn to update passwords or check their bank accounts regularly, these become ingrained habits, boosting long-term customer security. This program also reduces inattentional blindness in customers who were previously unaware of just how harmful these scams actually are, hence fostering ethical consumerism, as consumers prefer banks committed to consumer protection. For OCBC, these programs enhance their reputation and strengthen customer loyalty. Moreover, OCBC can avoid any potential backlash from customers affected by scams. OCBC can also grow their market presence through positive customer feedback. For MAS, they benefit by reinforcing Singapore's reputation as a secure financial hub. This will boost investor confidence and strengthen public trust in the financial system. MAS can also reduce scams and save resources that would have been spent dealing with the aftermath of the scam. As for the limitations, our education program relies on voluntary participation. Customers may view our program as optional rather than essential. This will cause uneven levels of awareness among customers regarding the severity of the scams as well as how to deal with them. The elderly and less tech-savvy customers may be less willing or capable to engage with the program, leaving them more vulnerable to scams. Hence, we propose a mandatory integration of basic cybersecurity training into the account setup process. This ensures all customers will receive this critical information upfront, regardless of their willingness or capability to engage with the program.
Next, we'll be doing an analysis of the government's proposed measures in response to phishing scams. The Shared Responsibility Framework for Phishing Scams was announced on 24 October this year by the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the Infocom Media Development Authority. It is designed to improve the management of phishing scams within the financial institutions and telecoms, focusing on sharing responsibility for scam-related losses between entities and consumers, effective from 16 December this year. Under the Shared Responsibility Framework, financial institutions have 5 key duties to fulfill, while telcos must fulfill 3 key duties. Failure to do so will result in them being responsible for the customer's losses. However, if all of them are fulfilled, then the customer will not be entitled to a reimbursement and will have to bear the responsibility for their own negligence. We believe that there are 3 main ethical benefits of the SRF. Firstly, it helps to answer the ethical dilemma of who should be held responsible by providing clear guidelines as to who should bear the responsibility for customers' losses. It also pushes FIs to a higher level of responsibility of preventing harm, rather than just the minimum duty to not cause harm, as it increases institutional accountability. By holding banks and telcos responsible for adhering to certain preventive duties, the SRF ensures that they take an active role in protecting customers. This is an ethical improvement from the OCBC situation, where consumers lacked effective fraud alerts. The SRF's real-time surveillance and mandatory transaction alerts would have likely mitigated the impact of the OCBC scam. Secondly, it also ensures transparency and fairness in loss allocation, as one ethical criticism of the OCBC scam was ambiguity over who should bear the loss. The SRF clarifies this liability, making it more ethically transparent. If a FI or telco falls short of its responsibilities, they are held liable. This clarity in responsibility distribution creates a fairer outcome for consumers, who can trust that banks and telcos have a vested interest in preventing scams. It also prevents financial institutions from being unfairly judged or criticized in previously ambiguous situations regarding scams, since they are now being held to a high level of responsibility and the rules are clearly defined. Lastly, the SRF preserves customer autonomy and responsibility by acknowledging that consumers also have a role to play in safeguarding their own accounts. By clearly establishing that consumers are liable when they inadvertently share personal information despite the safeguards, the framework emphasizes individual responsibility. This is ethically significant as it balances the role of customer vigilance with institutional accountability, a balance not clearly defined during the OCBC incident. However, nothing is perfect, and one limitation of the SRF is that it does not directly address the root problem of phishing scams, which is consumers unknowingly sharing bank credentials. Scammers will always develop new methods to bypass these safeguards, and we believe that these measures should be supplemented with education for consumers, especially vulnerable demographic groups such as the elderly, and that FIs are in the best position to do so, given their expertise. Next up, we have our group stand. As we all know, there are 3 levels of corporate responsibility as seen on screen. We believe that OCBC did not breach the strongest and lowest duty, which is the duty to not cause harm, as they are not the ones actually committing the scam. However, we do believe that they did not perform their duty to prevent harm, which we believe that they should be doing, given all the ethical considerations mentioned previously. We believe that banks should bear their primary responsibility, but not all of it, as customers have a role to play as well. Thus, our recommendation is for a multi-layered plan of introducing real-time transaction monitoring using AI and educating customers through awareness programs. We believe that these recommendations would address the ethical issues, complement the upcoming SRF measures by adding them, and solving the limitation we identified with it, being the lack of education. Next, we will be going through our other considerations. One consideration worth noting is that our project is heavily focused on the case of the OCBC phishing scams that occurred in Singapore between 2021 and 2022. Thus, there may be ethical issues and learning points that arose from phishing scams with other corporations in Singapore, or even other countries, that could be relevant. For instance, between 2013 and 2015, Google and Facebook were deceived by repeated fake invoice scams that totaled approximately $90 million. Thus, we believe that it may be worth investigating the details of such phishing scams to determine if there are learning points applicable in the context of the phishing scams in Singapore.
In conclusion, we analysed the ethical and operational challenges faced in the 2021 SMS phishing scams in Singapore revolving OCBC. Through the impacts on victims and OCBC's response to the situation, critical ethical issues were raised, such as the breach of trust, the balance of responsibility between banks and their customers, and the role of regulatory oversight by MAS. We later used the perspectives of various stakeholders like customers, OCBC, and the MAS to understand the phishing scams better to provide better recommendations. Our recommendations to combat such scams emphasized OCBC's aim to safeguard customer data and promote customer autonomy with the help of AI and customer education programs. Additionally, the Shared Responsibility Framework allows for clear accountability assigned to financial institutions, telco providers, and customers in dealing with scam-related risks. Together, these recommendations can help contribute to building a safer financial environment in Singapore. Thank you.